I find that a little gross. That is the law in Florida, but I got to tell you, personally, I find that a little gross.
Florida doesn't just protect them. It enforces it so heavily that we actually construe the contract in favor of the employer.
I think we're hella litigious.
Yeah.
And I think lawyers are like, hell nah, bro. I'm not signing that shit.
After you've poured your heart and soul and all of your investment into this one individual, 2 days later, he opens a competitive business right across the street from you.
You know what I say to that?
What?
Good luck doing me better than me. That's what California says, right? Welcome to the Miami Common Law Podcast, where we discuss business law and litigation as seen through Miami's entrepreneurial and cultural lens. I'm Jesus La Rosa, a Florida licensed attorney and the host of the Miami Common Law Podcast. Although this show is hosted by my law firm, La Rosa Law PA, it is not part of my legal practice. It is, however, my effort to have some fun, nerd out with my peers, and share zero-cost insights and entertainment for Miami's entrepreneurs and legal community. Our goal is to help business owners avoid mistakes and to create value for lawyers and clients alike. All right, guys, a little housekeeping. If you've not signed a contract with my firm, I'm not your lawyer. Also, laws change and jurisdictions differ. So if you've got any questions about anything we've said here today, please call a lawyer in your area. All right, with that, we'll get started. All right, Evelyn, cheers. A little Topo Chico out. You just gently,
Cheers.
There we go. Let's not make a mess, but welcome back.
Yes.
We're doing the
for
damn
having
thing.
me.
Of course. Welcome back, and thank you for coming back all the way from Kansas, and let's do the damn thing again.
Exactly.
It was fun.
Yes.
Okay.
So today, we are going to shake things up a bit.
Oh, how exciting.
Yes. So usually at the beginning of the episode, we, the guests, are the ones in the proverbial hot seat.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I get to interrogate y'all.
Yes. And so I thought it was only fair that the viewers and everyone gets to learn a little bit more about the image and the face of La Rosa Law.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How exciting. And and I told you not to send me the questions.
Yes.
Okay. Lovely. So you guys will get hot takes.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
So
Exciting.
let's see. First, we're going to go all the way back
The way I like to do it. Wouldn't have it any other way.
to La Habana. And a young Jesus is growing up in La Habana. Tell me what that was like, what you remember, the most
Sure.
notable memories.
Yeah, so I'll preface this by saying I left really early. I was 3 years old when I left, but I have a lot of distinct memories. I remember, for instance, that I hated school. I was 3. Perhaps I should not have been in school at 3 as a thing, but my dad was a professional athlete in Cuba. My mom was a professional as well. She was a doctor. And so they had me in what's called the Círculo Infantil. You ever heard of that?
Yes, I was also in a círculo.
This is Cuban for what?
Like a daycare.
Like a daycare? Oh my God, dude, I hated that thing. So I was born, like you said, in Havana. Not in El Calixto. That's where my mom worked, that hospital. There's another hospital, I think, a sort of a different institution where I was born. But I remember we were in an apartment in a place called Santos Suarez. And this apartment it was kind of like a little cave that my dad had. And you kind of had to go through this long corridor to get to like a glass door. And it was like a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, and kind of a very humble living room situation. And man, I despise walking down that corridor to go to school. I can about remember all the turns that we would take and stuff. But you know, it was an exciting time. My grandma, I remember I really enjoyed going to my grandma's house, which was in Boyero. It was right in front of an airport, and I recall being able to see the airplanes flying. I remember being mesmerized by that. And you know, my grandma's house was just a rambunctious place. She had like animals and stuff in her backyard. She had gallinas.
Yep.
You know, she did the stretch neck, helicopter, boom, and there was dinner. So that, you know, that's kind of like what we're talking about. And so it was a fun time. I injured my left femur. I flew off the kitchen counter when I was 2, and I have some recollection of that, but not a whole lot. And then we were just it was like the Rugrats time of life. It was, I think, like my dad and my mom and his sisters and brothers, they all had kids that are on the same period. So all my cousins are like within a 5-year window. So we did a lot of messing around. So we definitely got to have a fun time. But I left Cuba when I was 3 for Venezuela.
Right. So what was Venezuela like? Do you remember? How long were you there? What was that like?
Yeah, so I was born in 92, left Cuba in 96. Venezuela was actually really cool. So I had asthma as a kid. I always had like a weird kind of upper respiratory situation, and I remember in Venezuela it was just cured. Venezuela it's a way drier place, at least where I was in Valencia, in comparison to Cuba, which is a much more humid.
Very humid.
And it was just nice. I remember like a month or 2 in, it was nice to just be able to breathe. You know, so that was dope. And we had some family that were there. So the way we were able to leave, and perhaps I should say why we left. In Cuba for many years since the revolution, it's kind of like you can't really subsist with your salary.
Yes.
And so there's a sort of a Cuban saying for like, oh, you have to inventar, you got to invent, you got to get creative. And because my dad was on the Cuban national team for motorcycle racing, that's what he did. He had a motorcycle shop. And so a lot of the parts that they would get from the Cuban national team would end up through circuitous routes at my dad's shop,
por
being
casualidad.
sold. Correct. Por casualidad. Exactly. And so there was, it was feeling like at the time, like he would get caught pretty soon. And so my grandpa, who unfortunately got colon cancer right there at the end, my dad did not want to leave Cuba because he had it. He had a private shop. He had a wad full of dollars. He was fine. My mom used to work for tourism, which meant she also earned dollars, which, if you're not earning the currency that's subject to hyperinflation, it's a big advantage. Mm-hmm. So she was working in a clinic that would see mostly tourists at the time. She did many things before that, but anyway, that was what she was doing right around when we left. And it was one of those situations where my grandpa was like, look, I'm dying, you got to get out of here. Like, I know you're going to get caught, like, you got to go.
Right.
And so we left and never saw him because he died shortly thereafter. So that was, I remember that being like really impactful to my dad. I was so young, I didn't really have a relationship with that grandpa. I came to meet my mom's dad way later. But yeah, anyway, once we got to Venezuela, we had some family and we got to work right away. I mean, I know my parents did. I was actually really impressed with the school system in Venezuela. I remember distinctly being able to read and write like cursive in first grade.
Yeah.
And I was doing I remember I was like starting to learn times tables.
In the first grade?
Yes. Which is crazy.
Yeah.
I remember, I'll tell you why, is because when I came to the States, I remember thinking, these people are dinosaurs.
That's what I thought too.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was like, it was actually really, it was a huge advantage because I was too busy learning English. Mm-hmm. So it was nice to not be stressed about getting good grades. Like I felt like I could just get A1As just showing up. Light work. And so I could just like, okay, what's that word? Okay. And that, so we were in Venezuela when I was 3 to 6, got there in 96, left in 99. Mom, she was able to revalidate her title in Venezuela. So she was almost immediately working as a doctor in the clinics there. She worked at a couple public hospitals and one private clinic. And Dad just started doing, he opened a mechanic shop, like an auto mechanic shop in a place called Socorro, which was kind of like the hood in the city that we were at. And, it was a fun time. I ate a hell of a lot of arepas. It was like kind of where I gained my chubby, where I would gain my chubby things that I wouldn't shed until recently type of thing. And we had some really good friends. Unfortunately, we realized though that no matter how well we did as a family, you weren't safe. And here's what I mean by that. I distinctly remember my parents like being pulled over and just bribing cops because it was just easier. Like my dad never got a driver's license in Venezuela because you could just give a cop like 20 pesos or whatever and they wouldn't ask a question. And so you realize like, okay, we're not safe. And then a couple of our friends' kids started to get kidnapped. So we knew the guy who sort of was in charge of the lottery in Valencia. So we had some like well-to-do friends, and it's funny. Like in the United States, you figure you get sued.
Right.
In Venezuela, you figure you get kidnapped. So there's actually like kidnapping insurance.
For yourself or for your children?
For you, for your family. You can get a household policy. You can get an individual policy. It's a thing. It's a course of dealing over there.
Oh my
It's
goodness.
a big industry. Yeah. And so you're like, okay, that doesn't scale well. And then Chavez won. So Chavez started campaigning in 98 and won in 99. And he was campaigning with Fidel Castro and stuff. And so it was like, okay. The way I see it, people think like, oh, you were like a genius. Like, how did you know it was all going to go to shit in 99? And it was like, well, just imagine Maduro came here and campaigned with like the next candidate. Like it would not be a big leap to say, okay, we got to go to Canada or Spain or wherever, right? So, so then we left Venezuela, and came here. I mean, it was kind of a journey, that whole thing. So it was actually the first time we left Venezuela. We had to get round trip flights to Mexico, and it wasn't even the northern tip of Mexico. It was like somewhere in the middle. And we were actually interrogated on the way out
of Mexico, or
on the way out of Venezuela. I don't know why, but we actually missed the first flight because I guess they kind of knew what we were up to. Which is a weird time because it's like, okay, why do you care? Like, so we had to show that, we had the assets to go to Mexico, and that, we had round trip flights. We'd be back. We weren't like going to try to go to the United States. Right.
Right.
And so then we went to Mexico. We took a series of buses and stuff. And, we just walked up and we were truthful. We didn't like get like a coyote or anything like that. We were just like, look, we're Cuban.
Yeah.
This was 99 when they used to do like real background checks. So my dad was detained. So we just like literally we were on the Brownsville Matamoros border, and we got a hotel there for a couple of days. I mean, obviously I had no idea. I think I'm on vacation. Right. So I was like eating like that dope soup at the hotel with the chicken and the rice and stuff. And I'm a foodie. So even at 6, I'm like, this is awesome. I love Mexico.
You knew who you were at an early age.
Yeah. But parents were pretty stressed, Shit got real when we were on the cab, and my parents told the cab, like, look, if we're not back in 24 hours, just keep our shit, just like keep our bags and stuff. And I was like, well, that's not normal for vacation, right? And my mom, my dad stuck, like, I think it was like $3,000 in my pocket or something like that. And I realized, like, looking back at it now, that's like probably all the money we had, So we just, what I recall is just holding my mom's hand. We walk across the border, and they're like, oh shit, like, you're Cuban. That's crazy. Like, we had all our Cuban papers and stuff. And it was like a whole day sort of, I remember getting McDonald's. I was very happy about that. Only thing they asked me was like whether these were really my parents. And it was like, okay, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Mom and I were paroled that day. But dad was detained for about a month. So he stayed there. We took a Greyhound, across over to Florida. We had some family here. An uncle that he actually rafted over a couple years before that. He actually visited us in Venezuela and was like, hey, man, you guys should really consider leaving. It's better on the other side. And so, we heeded his advice, apparently, and just settled somewhere in Broward for a little while. For about a month, I think we lived with him. And then dad eventually got released and got paroled. And then just started, that was 99, right before 2000. And then just kind of rented a house and started working I know my parents did all types of things. Mom, cleaned banks at night. Dad worked for a mechanic shop, and then he eventually started doing body work on cars. Mm-hmm. So he became really good at like working for body shops, eventually became certified doing that. Eventually worked for a dealership for a while in right here on, I think it's Palm Ave. Might still be there. It used to be called 5 Star Auto Sales. Shout out to Rafael and Rafaelito who owned that place. Some good memories there. And then, just slowly kind of bought a house in Hialeah. A couple years in, I think like 2003, we bought our family home or something like that. And then just settled into like a suburban Hialeah upbringing because we were paroled. That kind of like sanitizes your entry. And because of the Cuban Adjustment Act of 66, a year and a day after that, you apply for your green card. At least back then when they were actually paroling people. Now they're doing this weird I-220A situations, which isn't parole. And then, 4 years or 5 years after that, you apply for citizenship. And because I was a minor when my mother did her citizenship test, then I got naturalized through her.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I see a lot of parallels to how I came here as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know that we discussed some of that, but I think we kind of cut through some of it.
Well, we actually walked through the other end. So we were in Canada, and we walked across through Canada. And at that time, the Cuban Adjustment Act was also still in effect. But I don't know, we were all paroled within 3 or 4 hours. I had an uncle living in Connecticut, and we also took a Greyhound to get closer to Connecticut, and then he picked us up from there. And we were kind of, I don't know if sponsored is the right word, but Catholic Charities kind of facilitated our entry here. I know they did a lot of work with Cubans once like they came to the U.S. and they had certain hubs. I think Miami was one of them. Houston is also a hub. And it's kind of funny. My parents initially were like, well, no, we don't want to go to Miami because mucho guaneo, which I'm like, what do you mean? We're Cuban.
Right.
But so we ended up moving to Houston, which I mean, there's still a very strong Spanish presence there, and there's still quite a bit of Cubans. But yeah, we also did the whole parole process, and I think I was around 8 or 9, so I think a lot of it you don't understand in the moment, and then as you grow up, like these details kind of start to make more sense that it didn't in the spot. Right. And hearing you say that, it also kind of makes me feel like you thought you were in vacation, and then you slowly realize, oh, this is not vacation. Right. But yeah, that's definitely.
So what year was that when you guys crossed the border in Canada?
So
do you recall?
I was 8 or 9, so it was either 2008 or 2009.
Got it. So a lot of things changed. It's interesting that you were only in there 3 hours. I wonder if because it's the northern border and there's like a lot less flow. My dad looks Middle Eastern. He like could be, right? So I don't know if it was like as hot before 2001. I mean, I don't want to like psychoanalyze or whatever, but yeah, he was detained for a month. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, sometimes it comes down to the CBP officer, right? Or it literally they have so much discretion, or at least it seems like they did at the time. Or maybe in 99 they just had a lot more resources and could do like a full deep dive on like who was this guy and what is his background and whatever. But that's really cool. So then so you find yourself in Connecticut.
We were there for a very short amount of time.
Okay.
Because like I said, when the Catholic Charities kind of started sponsoring us and asking us where we wanted to live, my parents quickly said Houston. I'm not sure why they didn't want to stay in Connecticut. Maybe my guess is they wanted us to be in a place that would ease the Spanish to English transition.
Right.
Like I vividly remember when I was in grade school, when we got to Houston, my sister and I were in a charter school where half of the day our classes were in Spanish, and then the next half they were in English.
So here there's an ESOL program, and so similarly they kind of like take you through sort of English proficiency, and so you kind of test out of it. It's interesting you say, because there is, you have to be mindful as somebody who's just migrating to the United States, and obviously you don't, because you just go, you're like poor, and so you're just going to go wherever you have family and wherever you can plug in. But in retrospect, if I was being intentional about this, because like, for instance, like my dad doesn't speak English. And the reason he doesn't speak English is because he just came to Miami, never had to.
Right.
Because you can just operate here in Spanish.
Absolutely.
Had he had gone to like Houston or Connecticut, he would speak English.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's a little bit like a short-term gain, but a long-term cost. Mm-hmm. My mom speaks English in a professional context. Obviously, she came here. She had to pass the boards. She had to do her residency again. And she's a doctor now and has a clinic and everything. But she kind of auto-translates in her head. She's not conversational. Like if she sat here and was listening to this podcast, she wouldn't know what the hell we were saying. But she knows like, where does it hurt?
Right.
She can diagnose. She can speak to a medical staff. And she can pass the 3 steps and her board.
Yes.
It's kind of weird. I don't know how they do that.
I mean, I've definitely noticed that here you can very much like do perfectly fine with just Spanish. In
Absolutely.
fact, like we've been walking around town, we've been seeing places, and I don't know if people can tell or if I have un cartelito que dice cubana, because whenever I'm walking with Carl down the street or like we go into a storefront, they immediately just look at me and they start speaking Spanish.
That's
Never
so
Carl.
funny.
It's
That's
always
so
me.
Funny. Yeah, so they do that with Callie a lot. So my wife is also from the United States, and the funny thing about Callie is she's fluent in Spanish.
She is.
Yeah. So a lot of people talk a lot of shit in front of Callie, and she knows exactly what you're saying, bro. And so sometimes she jabs at them, and says like, "I heard that,"
okay.
And they're like, "Oh no." Yeah, and she does that a lot in her job as an interior designer. She works with like construction people and stuff, and they're always being snippy behind her back about her design ideas and stuff. But anyway, I realized you were interviewing me, and I took on the role of interviewer. So yes, please.
Okay.
I will stop. I'll take a state.
So you're in the U.S.
Yes.
And this is going on a tangent a little bit, but I keep hearing you talk about your dad and auto shops and having that kind of business. And you yourself have a passion for racing.
I do.
So tell us about this. I don't want to assume, but do you feel like maybe kind of watching your dad do that kind of played a role in your racing?
So I think it would be a huge claim if I said, no, I had no influence. So my dad would have conceived me when he was fresh out of winning the Cuban championship in motorcycle racing. He was traveling all of Europe. So Europe used to have a socialist country championship. And as part of the team, it was a travel team. And so he would travel Europe and race motorcycles with his buddies professionally.
That's
in
awesome.
Cuba, which is insane. And so that's when I would have been conceived. And so I've, even as a young boy, had an obsession with anything with a motor on it. So my aunt lives in Italy, and they would bring me like little, like 1/8 or whatever model Ferrari cars and stuff. And I would just I could just play with those things for hours. And my dad would drive me around Cuba in his motorcycle, like no helmet, diaper bag on his gas tank. I would just fall asleep and he would just motorcycle me, and like tourists would take pictures of him because they were like, he's crazy. But to him and to me, that's what he did for a living.
Right.
So the odds in his mind of catastrophic failure was near zero. He wasn't planning on falling unless, something struck him. Right. And I never fell with him on the bike. And so there's just being used to it, and also being used to there's a specific sort of biker community that's very warm, and sort of exciting. I remember going to street races as a kid. Yeah. So they would just go to, just like straight line races, being a kid out at like the sort of the underground street racing scene in Cuba, and being like asleep and like having, you know, being out with mom or whatever, and just being annoyed about how loud it was. But yeah, no, definitely there was an obsession there. Then when we came to the United States, Dad raced also. You know, it was always his, I mean, this is kind of inside baseball a little bit, but he had always raced 2-stroke motors, which sound like they're really high pitched motors. They tend to have more horsepower, and they were better back in the day. And when he came to the United States, there was technology available to him that wasn't available in Cuba, which are these like Japanese bikes, like Suzuki GSXRs, Kawasaki Ninjas, and things like that. And those things weren't available to him in Cuba, so he was very excited to race some of those. So he did that for the better part of a decade when he got here, as soon as he could afford it.
Right.
You know? So I grew up racing with him. So I did this thing called Supermoto, which is they basically modify these dirt bikes to have street tires on them so you can race them on asphalt. And there's a track here there used to be a track here called Miami GP, which is in Opalaca, behind a flea market. And every Saturday, 6 p.m. to midnight, me and my dad, we would go out there and turn laps. And so I just kind of grew up doing that. That track actually ended up closing during COVID, because the owners, Risa with a Y, well, I don't know why I assume it's, you know, they couldn't sort of survive COVID, but they're still they're still a race team, and they put on race day events and services at Homestead, at AMR Homestead Miami Motorplex, which is where I race go-karts now. It's not the team that I'm with currently, but they are. Rudy and his wife are still doing that. And yeah, it's been a lifelong passion. I did a bunch of sim racing as a kid, just like as soon as I could, you know, Forza Motorsports, Gran Turismo, eventually iRacing. And it's just an inexplicable obsession. It just, I don't know. I sometimes I feel bad for the people that don't get this feeling, which is that you do a thing and you know immediately, like, you're supposed to be doing this thing.
Okay.
And with racing, that's how I feel.
Do you feel that way? Or yeah, do you feel that way about law as well?
I do. Yeah. So when I get done with a hearing, or I like the competitive piece. It's similar to racing in that. Then on my mom's side, my grandpa is a great orator and a poet and a writer. And there was always debates, you know, at home. And so I feel a little bit of influence that way. My mom's side of the family is a little bit more like intellectual. That's kind of like their thing. You know, my uncles all play chess. You know, they have like high elos, and that's kind of like the thing they do. And you know, instead of playing dominoes, they talk shit and play chess, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think that I get to do that professionally, and that's great. Racing professionally is a little bit more, you have to kind of be a dirtbag about it. And I'm like not really about the dirtbag lifestyle. It's not really compatible with a foodie like myself. So I was like, look, you know, you have this set of aptitudes. And I made the decision late high school, early college, to do law school, and I never looked back, and I really enjoyed it. But in terms of being in flow and just like sheer enjoyment, like I get enjoyment and reward from what I do for a living. I love that, and I obsess about the cases. But you have to have something that, or at least I have to have something that takes me out of that, because otherwise I would just obsess and OCD, and I would just have no stop. Yeah. Right. And so racing gives me balance. It gives me something to look forward to on the weekends. Daniel knows, the legal operations specialist. We spend, you know, a lot of his time kind of prepping for races. He kind of runs the cars around and takes them to various shops and makes sure that, you know, that they're up to, that the various upgrades that I've come up with are implemented before the next race. I actually have a race event this Saturday that I'm very excited about with Fada. I'm doing their Super Lap series in my Subaru at Homestead Speedway. So yeah, I think it does come from dad, and yes, and I've been obsessed with it. I think through sim racing. I think sim racing was what really like sparked it. That's when I realized that I didn't want to be on two wheels, that I would rather be on four. To my dad, that's when I deviated from dad. To my dad's dismay. But eventually he got it and supported me. I would not be able to afford it for a long time until after law school and stuff, and so I just had like a simulator rig at home and played virtually. But after law school, when I could afford it, and then I got some go-karts and eventually converted my high school college car into a race car.
Big kid hobbies.
That's right. Yeah, exciting stuff.
So let's talk about a little bit more about your life after law school.
Mm-hmm.
So did you always know that you wanted to venture out and start your own law firm?
No, absolutely not. I mean, I've always been entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
But I was frankly hoping to just get a good job, you know. Basically what happened was I did all the things that people tell you should enjoy. So you go to law school and you think, oh, you know, you're going to be this like badass criminal lawyer. And I got the baddest ass internship for the state in the cyber crimes unit, working the dopest case. And I was bored to death. I was like, okay, that's not what I'm doing. And then in law school, everybody said, you know, the dream job is to have like a corporate in-house role where you're not bugged much, but you make good money. You have all this autonomy. I got that role as a clerk in the summer, and the people there were wonderful. But I could see that if I did that for 30 years and then retired, I would be miserable. Because it's really difficult to find meaning and purpose when you're just a compliance checkbox, rubber stamping counsel. So then the only thing that I hadn't done was done like the big law thing, you know, the work 80 hours, flat out, collapse, whatever. And so I had lined up a role that I really respected after law school, and that was like my last thing.
Yep.
And then it didn't work out because of the pandemic and stuff. And I was like, you know what? I have no loans. You know, that doesn't need to become what it's become now. I didn't aspire to all this at the time when I graduated. I was just helping my mom with her clinic. There was a lot to do there. And, my family's always had small businesses. My mom started her own clinic. My dad always had her own shop. And there's this expectation, I think, in America that you're going to do corporate America. Like that's the way. And I see why. I mean, it's a really great vehicle to extract resources from the system. It's just like the American system is just it's probably the best resource generating machine that man has created. And so props to that. But eventually I said, look, I owe nothing to corporate America.
Right.
Like I owe it to me and my family to do something that I love, to be happy. I owe it to my clients to represent them zealously and to feel like my representation matters to them. And so I said, look, I'm doing all this free legal work for like friends and family, so I'm just going to create a vehicle through which I could do that in a way that's like legit. And then that just snowballed. It was just like literally in my like childhood bedroom. And I just got Clio. And then, you know, like my fraternity brother started to hire me for like different startups and things like that. And I think for like the first year, I just did transactional work. I didn't touch litigation because I was like, look, man, I'm like doing this other thing. And then in around 2021, Callie and I moved to New York. She wanted to pursue her graduate program. And then I was just like, all right, like I'll just take everything and anything. I became the shark horse, you know, the sign here, like,
yeah,
you know, I'll figure it out, you know. And the rest has been a wonderful story.
That's awesome. And looking at where you are now and where the firm is now, I think you're gonna recognize what I'm about to say to you.
Sure, yeah, no problem.
If I had a magic wand
Sure.
And, you know, I could make any of your wishes come true. What is your wish for the firm and the business?
That's a great question. So this is, I think you say that it's something that I'm going to find for, because I do this with clients, right? And it's to set expectations.
Yes.
It's like, you know, sometimes you're in a 30-minute consult and the client is just venting, and what you need to dial in is like, what is the intervention? How are we defining success? And what I tell them is like, look, pretend I have a magic wand and I could just make a wish come true. You know, what is it? So that's a great question to ask me. Frankly, I feel like I have everything I want.
That's awesome.
Like that's a wild thing to do, but I've been feeling this like this whole year, this like all of 2025. I said this at the end of last year. Sometimes I wish I could just freeze time, because like everything's super dope right now. Like, of course there's goals for the future, there's things to do, but I love where we are now, which is like we're genuinely boutique.
Yes.
Right. We're not like boutique in name only. We're like a ragtag group of people who love what they do and people who are really hungry. And one of the things that I see firms do is grow too much, too fast. And they start to have a principal agent problem that's severe. Which is that accountability falls to the floor. The client doesn't have one throat to choke. And I'm very conscientious of that. And where we are right now, those things are all true. So what I'm working on doing is slowly building a team who feels similarly accountable to the clients that they have beneath them, so that counsel and the client still has that relationship with me as sort of an intermediary and somebody who can still step in if need be. But really what I want to do is slowly grow from here in ways that are organic, in ways that are true to what we want, not like a money grab, right? Like, so one of the things is like personal injury. I've gone back and forth on this point about personal injury. I'm really passionate about having a client who's really, truly injured, where we can make a real intervention and make a big windfall for that client. Unfortunately, those clients, because of the players in the space, it's really hard to land one of those clients because the space is so saturated. There's so many people paying pay-per-click or whatever, that the trickle that you get are cases that feel icky. You know? Unfortunately, I mean, I think a lot of people aren't willing to say this, but some people are just like after a money grab, right? And I'm like, look, I'm not doing that. I've come too far. My family's worked too hard, right? And I don't need to, because as you know, what we do in the commercial litigation space is wildly successful. Yeah, it's not. You don't get these big windfalls always, because it's not always a contingency fee thing. Though we're starting to work on some hybrid models. But really, the goal is to slowly, if I was granted a wish, it would be to grow to a place where I can continue doing everything I love at the level that I'm doing it, not worry about making payroll, not worry about, you know, these types of things, but continue to be doing the work that I find fulfilling with the people who I think are worth doing it for, and with the team that I think is really about it. And so if I can continue to grow that, I will have succeeded, at least in the way that I'm defining it. And I mean, I think this year has been tremendous for that.
That's a really good answer.
Thanks.
Okay.
Off the cuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's going to be our intro to Jesus.
Thank you.
And now we're going to kind of talk about today's theme.
Exciting. Yes.
Which I know
Tell
is
us about it.
Near and dear to your heart. So
yes,
today we're going to talk about non-competes.
Ooh, non-competes. Okay. Well, let's start from the top, and maybe let's discuss why it's sort of near and dear. So this is something that in the early stages of the firm, these are the conversations that I had a lot with clients, people who are in startups, people who are hiring folks who, you know, they were wanting to restrict. As we're going to get into, Florida is a pretty good place for that. You know, as I become now a professional, because mom's a doctor, it's something that affected her. Doctors, for some reason, for some reasons that I will speculate as to why later on in the conversation, have just been herded like sheep into these like really crazy non-competes, at least in Florida. And then most recently, because my wife had to sign a non-compete for her design firm. And it was actually right around the time the FTC was coming out with their new rules about trying to ban it and stuff. And so there was actually some negotiating and some controversy about whether the non-compete would even be valid. And I'll leave it at that because I think it's still in force. So
yes.
So yeah. So what is a non-compete, Evelyn?
So a non-compete is a document you signed. It's typically written by the employer towards the employee, and it basically restricts your ability to bring specialized information and specialized training that you gained as a result of that employment to a different firm, a different competitor. There's some caveats to this, but it's usually like a provision that can be included in an initial employment contract.
Got it. So, okay. So, I think pretty straightforward. Non-compete, the way most people understand it is, look, you're going to come in here and then you're not going to be able to leave and compete against me, right?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of like the straightforward way people think about it. How do we distinguish it between other things like non-solicitation and other, like, let's say NDAs and those types of things? Because I feel like sometimes people are confused about what those things mean.
Yes. So a non-disclosure agreement it covers more like the things you learn that are not necessarily part of the trade. So this is not specific necessarily to the business. It's not about day-to-day operations. It might be more along the lines of things you see that are not privileged in the same sense that that information in non-compete is. So part of the pillar of the non-compete is that you are looking for a legitimate business interest.
Right.
And so an NDA,
this is a term of art that comes up again and again in the literature.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And so a legitimate business interest is something like a trade secret, which are protected not only through, well, I guess I should start by saying that this protection for non-competes in the state of Florida, they're governed by Section 542.335 of the Florida statutes.
Ooh, how fancy.
Yes.
So this is a whole little shenanigans thing that the Florida cooked up, right? They got their own little non-compete framework.
And
okay.
So as we were trying to ban non-competes at a federal level, Florida
The FTC did that.
Yes, the FTC. Florida doubled down and
Hold
said,
my beer.
Nope, we are not doing that here. And I think part of the reasoning kind of ties back to what you were saying about your entrepreneurial spirit. Here in Florida, we want to kind of preserve that entrepreneurial spirit. And so this non-compete is very employer friendly in the sense that we want to protect employers, we want to encourage business, and we want to encourage entrepreneurship, which is a fine line to draw, because at the same time, we also want to encourage healthy competition, because that's what drives progression and entrepreneurship.
Right, that's
further.
what California would say, right?
Yes.
It's like we're protecting business by not having non-competes. Okay, so let's just take a moment and step back and kind of walk through this systematically, right? So non-compete, you can't leave and compete with me, right? Non-solicitation, you can't leave and solicit my clients and vendors.
Yes.
Let's say. An NDA is what I tell you in the following whatever, please don't share.
Yes.
And I mean, NDAs are signed in a bunch of different contexts, right? Like I heard P. Diddy had non-NDAs at
I'm
his
sure
parties,
he
right?
did.
The Diddy parties had NDAs,
Yeah.
allegedly? Okay. And, I wonder what consideration was being paid to sign those NDAs. I wonder if any consideration needs to be signed. I know that in the startup space, just to, if you're like a web developer or any kind of developer, really, when a tech startup is wanting to discuss kind of a new idea or an app idea or whatever, they have the team that they're thinking about working with sign NDAs just to be able to discuss the idea.
Yes.
Right? It's
also very common in the patent space.
Tell me more.
Yes. So the whole point of a patent is to have a monopoly on a specific invention or a specific process. And so when you want to bring on a company to either buy a license from you for that specifically patented information, or when you want to bring somebody in to continue working on that technology and develop it further, if you inform the different inventors or the different people that you bring on about the invention, it's no longer novel, or they can go ahead and try to recreate it because you've already spent all this time doing research and development.
Right.
And so you sign an NDA to not use the information that you learn about what is being patented or whether the patent is pending. So you use that as a way to protect yourself from other scientists or other people, other facetas, which is a person.
Ooh.
Yes.
Is that Latin? You hit me with some Latin just now?
It is. It's a term of, it's a term of art, very popular in the patent space. It stands for a person having ordinary skill in the art. So a scientist is going to have, is going to be a person having ordinary skill within that field, an engineer, a physician. So you want to protect yourself from other people that have that specific individualized education from being able to kind of take your patent or take your invention, run with it, and make it better faster because you've already kind of set the groundwork for them.
Got it. So NDAs are a popular tool in that space.
Yes.
Okay, let's go back to the policy rationales for the non-competes, right? Because I think there's a competing discussion here, right? And it comes down to a matter of taste.
Yes.
Which is, look, we want to protect business because we're pro-business, right? But at the same time, we don't want to chill entrepreneurship, right? And so California would say, look, if you don't want to chill entrepreneurship and you want to be pro-business, then don't have any silly non-competes, right? And so how do the legislatures come to such different solutions for seemingly the same problem? And I know that that may be a question that you haven't considered before, and we haven't looked at the transcripts from the different legislatures and stuff, but I'm just like thinking out loud about, what do you think is in like the California average legislator's mind? And I guess I'll say this, pick either Florida or California and kind of think what might be their rationale for defending one position or the other.
I think maybe.
Would you rather defend California's position or Florida's?
I think after learning a little bit more about Florida's stance, I think I understand that a little bit better. Okay,
run it by me.
So I understand the point of protecting the legitimate business interest from the perspective of, like you mentioned, clinics. Imagine you have an employee and you really invest in them. You bring them in, you show him the ropes of the business, you share with him like specific processes that make you the top competitor, things that obviously the other competitors are not doing, and that's why you are on top. So it's not something that's generally accessible to the public. It's something you've created on your own. So you invest your time and energy into that employee. You teach them the processes that make you great. You connect them to the same resources that you have access to that the other competitors maybe don't. And then after you've poured your heart and soul and all of your investment into this one individual, the next day he comes into your office and he says, I'm resigning. 2 days later, he opens a competitive business right across the street from you. He is able to offer lower prices for the same products that you provide because he already knows the ropes. He's able to negotiate to an extent that you're not able to because you already have costs of research and development that they don't have because they already have all the information.
You know what I say to that?
What?
Good luck doing me better than me.
I mean,
that's what California says, right? It says, look, good luck leaving Apple or whatever. Or, you know, I mean, of course, there's litigation about this now because there's like genuine business secrets there. But in other words, if you're running a business genuinely and you're competing genuinely in a space, meaning you're not trying to be like anyone else. You're doing you. I'm doing La Rosa Law.
Right.
I'm doing it my way. And I'm handling the cases that I think I'm well suited to do. Right. And this is kind of a non-issue in the legal space because we'll talk about that. The Florida bar prevents non-competes because there's like a right to, it's interesting, but the Florida really protects clients' rights to choose counsel.
Yes. And to take those relationships on with you. I think it kind of draws some parallels to kind of patient-client relationship. I know there's physicians are specifically excluded from this ban because the right and the ethical considerations of that physician to patient relationship is so important. And I think it draws parallel to that client relationship with attorneys to where we should protect, you know, that relationship as it carries forward. And, you know, your physician is such an important role in your health. And in some ways, your attorney can be an important role in your health too.
That's a good point. Negative or positive. And look, and I think this is a very illustrative distinction to make. And it goes back and here we're not really like arguing what the law is, right? We've already said what the law is. Like in Florida respects non-competes more so. There's kind of like there's a taxonomy of cases. California's on one end. They're, let's say, pro-competition.
Yes.
Then there's a couple in the middle that are going to say, look, there's not a real legitimate business interest in putting a non-compete on a low-wage employee, right? If you're minimum wage employee, you don't know anything about that business that you're not going to go start Chick-fil-A, right? If you work the line at McDonald's, right? But maybe if you're an executive and you have a very interesting comp package and you know genuine secrets about the company, then, you know, I think it's like Connecticut, some places in the middle will protect that. And Florida will protect most things if it's a written agreement with a reasonable, legitimate business interest. And they define that pretty broadly.
Yes. And Florida doesn't just protect them. It enforces it so heavily that Florida law, when it comes to non-compete, actually deviates from our general contract law.
Oh, so, tell me more.
You know, in general contract principles, we are taught to construe contracts in light most favorable to the person who is being subjected to that contract.
The non-drafter.
Yes.
Okay.
So in Florida law, with regards to non-competes, we actually construe the contract in favor of the employer, who is usually the one drafting the contract.
That's a very
itself.
Interesting thing to notice. And yeah, it's pretty draconian. And I want to go back to this lawyer-doctor distinction.
Mm-hmm.
Because on my drive here, I was thinking about just this issue. And I was like, what is the fundamental difference between a legal client's right to choose counsel and the importance and intimacy of that relationship and a patient's right to choose a healthcare provider and the intimacy and importance of that relationship? And I looked through the literature and they couch it in like, there's this like public safety angle about access to medicine, which perversely somehow falls in the favor of non-competes in that area. But you know what I think it comes down to?
What?
I think we're hella litigious.
Yeah.
And I think lawyers are like, hell nah, bro. Like, I think lawyers are like, I'm not signing that shit. And so I think in our industry, it just didn't evolve. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of lawyers or doctors are just not as litigious, and they just like haven't made their position what suits them.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think the jurisprudence on non-competes in lawyers versus doctors evolves differently because of the fundamental training of those two different professionals.
Yes.
And the outcomes on a case-to-case basis.
Yeah.
You know? And I mean, I'm just psychoanalyzing this. I'm not a non-competes expert and I haven't like reviewed the literature enough to think that, but that is like sort of my hot take on like why it would be the way it is, sort of just temperamentally. It would be interesting to do another deep dive. I know we already wrote an article on this, but it would be interesting to do a little post-talk and a little post-mortem on that as a case study. But yeah, no, I mean, I think, look, a reasonable business interest in a clinic could be a number of things. Specific medicine cocktails, specific intake processes, specific drafting of H&Ps, history and progress and things like that. But really what it comes down to is like ownership of the patients.
Yes.
These clinics find that another parallel that is so interesting is that in the medical space, it's almost like the patient-doctor relationship is mediated through the clinic. Whereas the attorney-client relationship is not mediated through the firm. Like it is, but the lawyer, if like, let's say, you became barred and, you have a series of clients. Yes, they came through the firm. Yes, they're the law firm's clients. But if you appear as counsel of record on those cases, those are your clients.
Yeah.
Right? And if you leave the firm for another firm, I could sit there and say, well, there's a reasonable business interest in that you don't take the law firm's clients. But at the end of the day, it's the client's decision who they want their lawyer to be. And
that it ties back to that comment you made about the intimacy of both patient care and that attorney-client relationship.
Right.
It's a level of comfort, a level of trust that you can't just give to the next person.
Right.
It's funny you mentioned that. There was actually one of the key cases in Florida that...
Yeah, let's discuss some of these cases, right? Because you have some themes where you start with, what actually happens in court. And so you have when do employers win, when employers go too far, and other key themes. So why don't we go a little bit through this? What were you going to mention? Which case?
Yes. So in Infinity Home Care versus Amedicis, it was a home health referral from clinics and doctors, and the court determined that those referrals, which are a crucial part of how physicians gain businesses, they are a protectable interest because referral sources is basically how physicians gain clients.
That is so Florida.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. There's so many retired people here on like insurance policies that are like Medicaid, Medicare, whatever, that the primary care doctor and who they refer, the specialist, becomes a legitimate business interest of the clinic. I find that a little gross. That is the law in Florida, but I got to tell you, personally, I find that a little gross.
So, I mean...
But yes, that in that case, in Infinity Home Care v. Amedicis,
yep,
the right of the clinic was protected. It was found to be a reasonable business interest.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I think this term of art that keeps getting thrown around, the legitimate business interest, is so interesting, for lack of a better word, because the courts in Florida have consistently ruled that even though there's a list that includes trade secrets, confidential business information, relationships with specific customers, patients, clients, goodwill, which includes brand, location, marketing area, and extraordinary or specialized training, the court has consistently said that this list is non-exhaustive. And so these cases are extremely fact intensive, and the courts have full discretion to determine whether something actually falls within that legitimate business interest.
Got it. And in contrast, so actually let's go through some of these other cases. So in GFA International versus Trilas, engineer starts doing the same work through his own company. Court says it's the plain language of the covenant controls and reserves denial of injunction, right?
Yes. Let me tell you a little bit more about this case.
Yeah, please do.
So in this case, there was a group of engineers who were previously employed. They ventured out to make their own company, and they, quote unquote, took some of the clients from the previous engineering firm. But what happened here and why the court denied the injunction from the previous employer was because they determined that when work is transient, it doesn't qualify for an injunction. And let me explain this.
So the lower court denied the injunction that the holder of the non-compete was trying to assert.
Yes.
But then the appellate court reversed that ruling.
No, sorry. The lower court honored the injunction.
Okay.
But then the district court reversed.
Okay.
And so initially they determined that a legitimate business interest when it comes to clients only deals with clients that you currently have active projects in. So what happened with this previous employer was they had this client in their book of business, but they were no longer actually performing any projects for them.
Okay.
So it had been a while since they had actually performed a project for this company that was seeking their services. In fact, they opted not to renew a contract with this company. So the group of engineers that branched out and created their own company took that client and started doing work for them.
Okay.
And so the court determined that because the nature of the work that was performed was transient, and because the prior business had an opportunity to continue working but chose not to do so, then it was fair game.
Interesting. So what is another case where employers have gone too far? So we've got this one, Vassell's v. I think ironically Dr. Terrazzo, but it's about Terrazzo, right? Which is just the construction terrazzo.
Yes.
Right.
So
in that case, terrazzo work does not equal extraordinary training, and so there the employer had no legitimate business interest, and an injunction was reversed in that case.
Yes. So in this specific case, an employee came in to learn how to deal with hardwood floors, like vernishings, how to treat a hardwood floor. And the court determined that this is not necessarily specialized training. Specialized training has to be very particularized, expensive, and very centered around a specific business and not easily accessible to the public.
In other words, this is common knowledge.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? You're treating the floor. This is not something that you're going to have a non-compete for, which is an interesting ruling in Florida because Florida typically is very all-encompassing when it comes to these things.
Yes. And this is also intended to protect the lower wage worker. Florida law, the Florida courts definitely don't want low wage workers to gain training and then not be able to apply it somewhere else to their detriment.
Got it.
Which is interesting, and it kind of conflicts with this idea that at the same time, when we look at non-competes in Florida, the financial detriment of the individual that the injunction is being placed against is not a consideration. So we do not consider financial hardship. We do not consider the, it could be that you work in a very specialized field and you sign this non-compete, and the employer came and said, I'm enforcing this non-compete and I am, filing for an injunction. It doesn't matter that this is the only field that you've ever worked in your whole entire life, and it's super specific. And it doesn't matter that if you no longer have access to this job and if you can't work in this field, that you're going to go bankrupt and you can't feed your family and you're not going to have any money. The courts do not consider this at all, which is it's funny you talk about California because it's a really big state on the banning of non-competes, because New York itself is similarly situated when it comes to non-competes. And when looking at the Florida law, New York stated that it was truly obnoxious. They found the Section 542.335 to be incredibly helpful to employers at the detriment of the employees, and its rules like that lack of consideration for financial hardship was truly obnoxious and not indicative of what we do in real life or what we should consider. Most states do a reasonableness test in which they weigh, things like that hardship and the individual's ability to find work in another field against the business interest of the employer. But here in Florida, we don't do that because the courts here have determined that the interest of protecting the business is more important and supersedes.
It is a little bit conservative, right?
Yeah.
It's like if you're like the small town, small business, you're kind of like you're the guy, you're like the high school quarterback of the town, and we want to protect that because that's what's generating jobs and that's what's okay. I get it. At the end of the day, I get it. I mean, in New York, there's a bunch of finance guys. And I know non-competes are legit there. I know that they take these like 6-month vacations when they're, out of it from one job to the next, just because, whatever, like there's a non-compete. So let's talk a little bit about the FTC. The FTC got a little wild there at some point and was like trying to ban non-competes.
Yes.
And it was a little bit of this approach where if you're like a really like an executive with a crazy comp package or whatever, then in that circumstance, so they kind of, people thought they were like trying to ban it altogether, but their approach was kind of well measured, which is to say, look, they still work if you're in this tier of employee, but like pretty much everyone else, if you're just like a regular employee, like entry level, whatever, that's not gonna fly. So what happened there, and how come? I guess did the FTC sort of do their thing, and then we came out with Florida's thing? Tell me a little bit about that.
Definitely not. So the FTC, once they tried to come up with this non-compete ban, they were immediately met with litigation from a multitude of states. I think the idea of having a centralized kind of governance over non-competes didn't rub the states well, and they wanted it to maintain a state's. Yeah, they wanted it to maintain a state's issue. So as of now, that ban is halted, and it doesn't seem like that ban is going to happen anytime soon, especially given the current administration, which is very pro-business. So I think it's easy to come to the conclusion that this ban is not hitting us anytime soon. And so at this point, states are able to decide how they handle non-competes.
Got it. And I think it's worth mentioning some like really relaxed states, or I guess bans on non-competes, are California, North Dakota, Oklahoma, DC. And then some states that heavily protect low-wage people. They're kind of in the middle. That's sort of the FTC approach: New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Virginia. And then kind of the rest, especially in the South, like Florida, Texas, Georgia, Louisiana, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Arkansas, Colorado, are a little bit more protective of businesses, will enforce non-competes, with Florida being sort of on the stronger enforcement end of that.
Yes. And for practical reasons, let's go back and say that, you are an employer and you have an employee that walked away, and you say, but wait, they signed a non-compete. What do you do next?
If you're an employer and an employee sign a non-compete and they kind of walk away?
Yeah.
Well, originally you do nothing until it starts to hurt your business. I mean, I guess, look, here's the problem. Here's the rub. Is that, and this is why it just sort of chills mobility, because some employers will use it as a reason to incentivize against leaving.
Yes.
When it's not supposed to be.
Yes.
Okay. So an employee who has a non-compete, who's thinking about different career options, all of a sudden has to say, well, man, they have to underwrite, like, how is another employer going to interpret this thing? Can I actually, because no employer likes a 6-month or 1 year gap in employment. And so then you have to like sort of explain the non-compete. And so the way it should work is it shouldn't be enforced at all unless you know that employee is taking some legitimate business interest, something that only you hold to that other business, which is really hard to prove. Right, it's kind of a factually intensive thing, which I suspect why Florida is like kind of very doctrinal about it, because they're not going to get into the specifics of it. They're going to assume almost that the non-compete is there because there's a legitimate business interest, and they're going to enforce it unless you kind of prove otherwise. So there's a little bit of a question about who has the burden.
The burden, unfortunately, falls mostly on the employee. So here in Florida, you are able to get a near total injunction if you claim that a non-compete was violated almost immediately.
Wow.
And the thing here is that the courts have applied this blue penciling doctrine, which means that an employer can draft the most burdensome non-compete ever. It can be completely irrational. You can say, you're not allowed to practice in this field for the next 4 years. And, we can impose great fines. You can't practice within this geographic area, within this certain amount of time, within this specific field. And all the court is going to do is blue pencil, meaning these contracts are not voidable. Instead, what the court does is rewrite the terms to something that they deem more reasonable instead of throwing the case out altogether. So really, employers can, draft the most burdensome, unreasonable non-compete, and the court will evaluate, knowing that the worst that can happen is that the court might change it from 4 years to 2 years, or maybe reduce the geographic area where they're allowed to practice. So these non-competes, the literature suggests that they're incredibly employer friendly. And honestly, it's very much to the detriment of the employee. However, the biggest caveat to consider here is that whole idea of the legitimate business interest. Because as an employee, if you are able to prove that there is not a legitimate business interest that is being protected, then the burden shifts completely onto the employer. But only if you're able to establish that there isn't a real legitimate business interest, which is already hard to do because the courts,
for an employee.
Yes.
That's insane.
Because the courts have ruled that that list of what is considered a legitimate business interest is so non-exhaustive.
Right.
It's really hard for an employee that doesn't have, as you mentioned, the resources to actually be able to.
So the upshot is people they just don't litigate it. They just like wait it out, or they just stay in that job that they don't want to be in.
Yeah.
Right. And I guess that's kind of my personal thing with that. But look, I mean, I get it. Florida is where it is. I'm genuinely surprised though that they wouldn't invalidate provisions that were facially unreasonable, right? Too broad, too long, right? So this blue penciling thing, this editing down to sort of rewriting the provision to make it reasonable under the circumstances. I mean, I guess you could think about like somebody who's got it says a 3-year non-compete and it's been a year and a half. So you're saying the court would say, look, a reasonable non-compete would be nothing more than 2 years. So, we're just going to keep you beholden to it for another 6 months, even though it says 3 years.
Yes.
Okay.
The non-compete will never be voided, but it will be adjusted. And the Florida courts are required to adjust these non-competes for employers.
Got it.
So also, as you mentioned, employees can argue, that something's overbroad, overlong, and non-needed, but only after the injunction has already been called for. In fact, one of the strongest protections here for employers is called ex parte. It's an ex parte proceeding in which if you believe that the non-compete and the information that is protected within it is so severe that you run the risk of your previous employee releasing the information, they can literally knock on your door with a marshal, take all of your phone, your computer, any communication, all your documents relating to the business without even needing to notify you that an injunction has been placed.
Whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Only reserved for the most severe cases. But yes, you don't even need to notify the employee that an injunction's being placed or that you're enforcing the non-compete. You can let the court know that you have an emerging legitimate business interest that would be harmed directly if this is not enforced, and that ex parte proceeding will just take place.
Wow. Unless you're a lawyer. Then you can do whatever you want.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, look, I think I get it. Hopefully the viewers get it. They'll have the article to get in super deep detail. Let's get into our sazón completo.
Yes.
Let's get into some of this fun stuff. We have, what do you want to start? Do you want to start with a new courthouse?
Yes, I
Okay.
am very interested.
Miami-Dade County Civil Court
Yes.
cases have the new Osvaldo N. Soto Miami-Dade Justice Center. How cool.
Yes, it's a new courthouse after much needed renovations. I found this specifically interested because I cannot wait to get inside a courtroom. I know I'm a 3L right now, and I know you yourself have mentioned that you've done quite a few hearings via Zoom.
That's right.
Have you ever had the opportunity to do an actual case in court?
I've never done an in-person evidentiary hearing. So I was just thinking about this also on the drive here, thinking about what this means, the renovations. Apparently there's like really good high resolution displays where you can display your exhibits. And apparently you could do orientations. You can schedule orientations with the clerk to sort of familiarize yourself with the specific devices that they're using, to make sure that, that your devices are compatible and this type of thing, which is definitely something, I mean, to the extent, as you know, we have a trial potentially coming up in April. We should see where that is, because that's going to be an in-person showing. And I would like to, we should definitely, it behooves us to go there and make sure that we have a sort of a game plan for how we're going to present evidence, because there's plenty of evidence to be presented.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be dope if we could just like screen share,
Exactly.
Apple Play or whatever, the exhibits, and apparently you can annotate on some of the displays.
Yes, and I think this new renovation is kind of the system trying to keep up with the complex litigation that has been arising in Florida lately.
Sure.
And to be able to have that technology to, do exhibits.
I think it's much needed. I know the Florida courthouse just reeks of like 60s and 70s. It's like rich mahogany. It's not very well lit. I mean, at least when I went not long ago. So I wonder what divisions are being heard there. I'm excited to potentially be in there ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's I wonder if the jurors have their own little displays. So I think that's super interesting. Yeah. Sometimes I know the federal courthouse, the jurors have their individual displays.
Mm-hmm.
The federal courthouse is really nice, the Southern District one.
I need to see.
It's really dope. It's like, it's the architecture. There's like a cylinder that goes up from the bottom of it all the way to the top. Mm-hmm. And the rest, the courtrooms and everything sort of are in the periphery of it. And it just feels like you're in the eye of the storm. The architecture is insane of the federal courthouse. I believe it's Ferguson Federal Courthouse, but it's famous, and you should look it up. So to the listener, definitely look it up, especially if you're interested in architecture. So then moving on from there, we have sort of an update on the Insomniac Space nightclub kerfuffle.
Yes. So last time was a couple months ago. Yes. And Insomniac had sued Club Space operators over Factory Town.
It was something like, this is a case about greed. This is a case about biting the hands that feed, or something like that.
Yes,
that was like
it was a very juicy complaint.
Very spicy first sentence to complaint. I've sort of taken that on as a challenge in future action.
Yes, and so now their Club Space operators filed a federal counterclaim in Miami against Insomniac. and they alleged breaches of their agreements, and they claimed that Insomniac interfered with their ability to operate and changed economic terms.
So this is expected, right? One side files the complaint, the other side answers. They have their own little counterclaims of their own.
Yes.
I think we should definitely we should pool the counterclaims and see what, because you know how this is. You can come up with stuff, right? We do a brainstorming sesh, right? And we can come up with counterclaims, especially in transactions and operations as complicated as nightclubs. I'm sure there are complaints to go around. But I remember from reading him that Insomniac was alleging that literally millions of dollars were removed from the account. I could be misstating that. I don't have the complaint in front of me right now, so don't quote me on that.
Right.
But then I guess the thrust of the counterclaim is that Insomniac was being unduly burdensome on the operations of the business, and were restricting the operations.
Yes.
In a way that made it kind of difficult to operate, and because of that, they had to sort of move in the way that they did. We might just do a deep dive on that. I feel like that's I could feel like we could pull out the actual pleadings and kind of read between the lines a little bit and psychoanalyze. Yeah, I think that could be fun. Maybe in the future. I think it's good. I think that complaint was filed in August, and I think the counterclaims were filed in September.
Yes.
So
quick turnaround.
I mean, there's a deadline on this type of stuff. So very quickly then, a ChatGPT update. We have 5.2 is out.
Yes, 5.2 Pro.
5.2 Pro.
5.2 Auto.
Okay.
So, I have had the opportunity to play with ChatGPT 5.2, and I have to say I am impressed. I really like the new reasoning model, especially in the Pro section. Something that really caught my attention is that as you're asking it questions, not only do you have the ability to follow up and update and make changes live as the learning language model is reasoning, you can also see the reasoning.
Yeah, it has a pane on the right.
Yes.
And you can kind of see it work, right?
Exactly.
I found that was really dope.
Yeah. Because, these machines and these models, we don't really understand the language that goes on. I know there's a lot of translation that they have to do for us. And so to see it in real life and to understand the reasoning allows you to kind of go back and say, hey, in your reasoning, you said this. And then I copy and paste exactly what they said in the reasoning.
Wow.
But this is wrong. This is what I want you to look into instead.
Wow.
And so you're able to make live in corrections that will definitely alter the entirety of the final product because it is a machine and it can't read our minds.
Right.
So it's natural that it doesn't know exactly what we want.
That's really cool. I haven't done that yet. So, but I'm gonna be reading that more often. Typically, I respond to the output, and I go, the output said this. This is not quite really what I was asking for, but it's interesting to kind of diagnose exactly where in the reasoning things diverted from what you meant. I've noticed that the outputs have been longer.
Yes.
But more detailed.
Mm-hmm.
It used to just give you like a blurb, and it felt like it was kind of bandwidth limited, and it was just like, here's what I can manage. Whereas now it's like really like kind of a point by point treatise that comprehensively, sometimes a little too much, addresses your concern. I think that's been dope.
I think it also has become better at telling you all the sources that it's used.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I have found at the top, it usually tells you how long it took to reason certain things. And you have the ability to click the thinking mode, and you can click standard thinking or extended thinking, to where the GPT argues kind of within itself to try to come to the best conclusion.
Whoa, wait, thinking mode? Oh, I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen it. It's like stop to think or whatever. Yeah. So does it select that automatically now, or are you still having to select it?
You have to go and select, and then at the bottom there'll be something that populates that says thinking. And if you click that button, you have standard thinking option and extended thinking option. The extended one, it'll take longer to reason, and it'll give you a more thorough answer with more nuance, but it also takes longer. So something that would have maybe taken you 9 minutes, it'll do it in 20.
Have you had it draft like actual Word documents?
Yes, but when I start a project, you can start a project and give it instructions. In my instructions, I usually type, I like things in chat, don't make it a separate document.
Sure. I do too. But I recently had it like it on its own sort of created a work document. I used to like poo-poo that because it wasn't as good before, but this time it like really worked. So I encourage you to try it, like to generate just the Word document of something and it like generates output, because you could see on the right in the thinking pane how it's generating it.
I see.
And you can kind of see when it's kind of going off the rails, but I've been very surprised with the output in just this week. I had some depositions this week, as you know, and so I was using it to kind of workshop some questions, and I was surprised by the quality of the questions, and the comprehensive nature of them. Yeah. So that cut some time off the prep. So yeah. Anyway, GPT 5.2.
Yes.
Here to stay, I think.
Yes.
Yeah,
Another
not a problem.
thing I found really helpful, I actually uploaded my Blue Book.
Oh, shit.
Into
ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Like a PDF?
Yeah, I'll show you later. But yeah, I uploaded it into my workspace. So you just have a
project that's just the Blue Book?
No, I just integrated into all of my project files.
Whoa.
And so I say, make sure everything is in accordance with Blue Book and using Blue Book citations adequately.
You got to give me that bootlegged Blue Book that you're using.
We might have to leave that out.
No, I pay for it. Pay for it. You heard?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So let's talk about the last little bit of Sazón Completo.
The spiciest part.
Disciplinary actions.
Ooh.
Yes.
Nice.
And so
tell me about it.
Sticking near and dear to my heart, I picked something related with the patent field. So this is a disciplinary action from 2022.
Now, we're not talking about specific names or anything, right?
No, we're not.
We don't want to trip over any bar complaints or anything like that. Okay.
Right.
We're just taking general kind of broad strokes, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Surprise me.
Yes. So in Miami, an attorney was suspended for 3 years because they failed to maintain a reasonable follow-up on a patent application and its status, which led to the patent office administering a notice of abandonment because there was no further review, and it was because no further review was sought by the attorney within the allotted time period. This is specifically critical in patents because it's so time specific, especially since post the American Invents Act, we switched in the US from a system that used to be first to invent to now first to file. So you could have been the first one to come up with this invention, but if somebody beat you to the PTO office to file this invention, that person gets the patent and not you.
Dang.
And so if there is abandonment of a patent, that gives somebody else the opportunity to get ahead of it and get that protection before you can. So this attorney was unresponsive to the client and failed to communicate that the notice of abandonment had even taken place to begin with. And so this was a reciprocal discipline action based on the disciplinary action taken by the USPTO, since patent attorneys operate at a federal level, and it's, we go through the MPEP, which is the multi-patent examination practice, and it's federal instead of, in the bar, you have to be licensed to the state that you practice in.
Sure. But if you get in trouble with the USPTO, they make sure to let your local state know what's up.
Exactly. And that's exactly what happened here. So the 3 years suspension was a reciprocal discipline action based on the action by the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, in which this attorney was also suspended for 8 months. So the USPTO actually gave 8 months, but the Florida court decided to give a higher punishment of 3 years.
Yeah, Florida doesn't mess around.
Yeah.
Florida doesn't mess around. How's your patent bar prep coming along? We've been busy.
Yes.
And you just finished finals.
I did.
So I'm just kind of trolling you a little bit because I know it can't be that great.
It hasn't been that great. I did do like an initial round, like a diagnostic test.
Okay.
For lack of a
So
better
you got
word.
that course.
Yes.
And then the first step of any good course is to show you how bad you are at the thing.
Yes. And
Okay.
it wasn't as bad. My school, fortunately, has a class that you take in conjunction with patent law, and it's called patent practice.
Okay.
And so they teach you the practical aspects of patent prosecution, which is, writing office actions, writing claims. The claims are at the foundation of the patent because the claims tell you exactly what is patentable, and you're explaining to the USPTO why you deserve a patent. And so that claim construction is the most important component because the ambiguity is kind of what causes that back and forth that can delay a patent when the USPTO comes back and says, well, this is not specific enough, or this is not novel enough. This doesn't satisfy the tests that you need in order to get a patent. So because I've had that class and I've had patent law, and I fortunately had really good professors, and at KU we do have the ability to have smaller classes, which it's already small because patent is such a kind of niched down thing. I did find that I didn't score as poorly on the diagnostic.
That's good.
Yes. But I am excited to take the patent bar and be able to bring patent cases.
We're super stoked.
To La Rosa.
We're super stoked. Do you have the test calendared? Is that already a thing that's happening on a certain date or not yet?
No, it's not calendared
Okay,
because
cool.
I do feel
no
like...
pressure. No pressure. I'm good. Listen, your world is your oyster.
I know.
It's fine.
I would like to get it done before law school, before bar prep for the Florida
Ambitious
bar.
Ambitious goals.
Yes.
I think you can do it.
Yeah.
But not if I keep slamming you with work.
What's good for the goose.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Sounds good. All right, well, listen, this has been a wonderful time.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for the interview of me this time, because I don't know that I would have come up with the idea on my own, other than Daniel kind of bugging me about it. He's my Jamie. If you know, you know. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yes.
And let's do it again soon.
Amazing.
All righty.
All right.
Cool. All right, guys. See you next time.
Bye.